At the local police station, on a cold, rainy evening, Han Seoryong complains about her husband's behavior the night before. When the officer demands to know what exactly was off about him, she explains that as they slept together, he behaved differently from how he had been behaving throughout their 2 years of marriage. The following morning, they noticed some of the neighbors were moving out, but it's not something they pay much attention to. Instead, her husband wants to talk about the previous night. He apologizes for his behavior, but she suggests they discuss this after work and helps him out. Nevertheless, before he left, there was an inexplicable, strange silence. Amidst that silence, she and her husband locked eyes. She was blind, but even if she was unable to see, she could tell that her husband, who always smiled at her, wasn't smiling. She wanted to ask why, but couldn't, recalling that her doctor said it was a bad sign to question and doubt every little thing. Things got worse when she noticed that her husband, who usually came home early, hadn't come home when the 8 p.m. alarm rang. It was almost 4 a.m. and he still hadn't returned home. Usually he left work by 7 p.m. every day. Like clockwork, he always stayed close and never left someone like her alone for long because she was blind. Yet that day, she called him countless times, but kept hearing that his number was not available. The thought that something must have happened to him began to loom over her head, and it caused her to accidentally cut herself. Soon, it became clear to her that her husband had disappeared. That's why she went to the police. After hearing all this, the officer at the counter suggested they wait till it's a full day after his disappearance to open a missing persons case. They couldn't go against that principle except if it's a criminal case. For example, trying to disguise an assault case as a disappearance. That's a shade at her blood-soiled coat and knife. Before the officer asks Seoryong whose blood it is, she casually replies with a question wanting to know if confessing the blood on her belongs to her husband would help them find him faster. To understand better how close they were, let's go back to how they met. Back when Seoryong was 24 years old, it was a gloomy, rainy day when she met her husband, Kim Hyun, an employee at an establishment she visited. It was also around the time when something went wrong with her retina and she wasn't in the highest of spirits. He was so kind to her, gracing her with an uneventful first meeting where he gave her a cane to help her move around better. He even advised her to go inside until the rain stopped, which she did. Inside, she thought about the cane and concluded that she hated relying on it, but she had to use it anyway. Those days were the worst for her because she didn't understand why she became blind. She was certain she didn't deserve this fate. After she obeyed every little instruction that was given to her and took on a job as a cafe taker that wasn't meant for her, along with some other good deeds she carried out. Going blind made Seoryong feel pitiful and completely hopeless. She was thinking deeply when he came to her and offered her a mug of coffee to help her with the cold. Her world had almost gone dark. But Hyun made her feel like her light had returned. Now we know how they met. Let's go back to the station, where Seoryong is shocked to hear that the only house in her apartment building that was occupied was hers. No one else lived there. He just checked all the houses and found out they were empty and is shocked she didn't know about this. She refuses to accept this. She grabs the detective's coat and argues that what he's saying is impossible. She had exchanged greetings with them when she passed by daily, but he questions how she made greetings when there was no one here. Things get worse when an officer comes to inform the detective that he just got a call from the station that the name Kim Hyun is not even showing up in the building's registration. Hearing this shatters her, but as the days go by, the thought that her 2 years with Hyun was a lie sinks in. A month after his disappearance, she goes to church, waiting outside as she recalls her last encounter with the officer. It was at the station, and he charged her to get a hold of herself. She had come around too many times that he found it hard to feel bad for her, and threatened to charge her with obstruction. Still, she begged that he reopen the case and investigate one more time. He explained that it was impossible to investigate since there was nothing left in the records. Hearing that did not stop her from pleading that her husband could have messed with the wrong criminal organization and they made him disappear without a trace. The detective sternly warned her to stop pushing this case because in the original file, she lied that she had her husband's blood on her. Reopening the case would only hurt her, so he wanted her to accept that she was scammed and move on. Scammed? How could it be? She didn't lose anything financially. Why then did they scam her? She asked. But all he could tell her was that the only one who could give her an answer to all her questions was the man who ran away. So what's she doing here? She doesn't go too far before a priest stops her, urging her to sit and rest, but she refuses. She then asks him if he truly believes in things he doesn't see, and warns him to open his eyes and stop fooling himself. She advises him not to become a fool like she was, but he replies that she doesn't have to see something to believe it. He asks her if they need a reason to believe in something, but she claims she doesn't know. Not knowing the answer to that question is what landed her here. She confesses that although she didn't know how her husband's face looked, she loved him without any reason. His hand was the warmest and largest she held, so she saw him as her salvation. She had no one like that in her life, which made her see him as a miracle, until he vanished like he was never there. His absence allows her to understand that she got it easy, and the priest assures her that coincidence might be from the Most High. He tells her that Matthew 7 verse 7 says, "Ask and you shall receive, keep seeking and you will find, keep knocking and the door will open." After those lines, he hands over a pamphlet on some private investigation team to her, leaving her wondering how it got here. Sometime after, Seor-young goes for her routine eye checks and gets to know that her sight is returning. The doctor feels like this is worthy enough to be reported to the academic community. She is surprised to hear that it's this serious, even so. It doesn't make any sense. Her husband disappears and the fog in her vision disappears with him. It's too much of a coincidence to be random, and this is the first time this ophthalmologist is witnessing something like this. She is certain Seor-young was diagnosed with retinal dysfunction 2.5 years ago, and it's almost as if it was temporary. She knows this kind of thing warrants further academic research, but considers the possibility of someone having manipulated her optic nerve periodically and temporarily paralyzing it for 2 years. The only person who comes to her mind is her husband. He kept helping her apply the eye drop when she could have done it herself. He claimed he was doing it because he wanted to help her do everything. Well, he's out of the picture for now, so she wants to know if her assigned doctor has been changed. He has, and she apologizes for not explaining what happened to her earlier. She explains that her assigned doctor, Dr. Park, found a nice opportunity abroad and has gone to pursue it. Now, Seor-young knows that her husband didn't disappear alone. Nevertheless, as she regains her sight, her thoughts go back to the day Hyun showed her their wedding photo, 2 years ago. Back then, she was still very much blind and was curious about how he looked in the picture. She wondered what kind of facial expression he was making, and felt if she could see his eyes, everything would have been perfect. He assured her he was smiling, and used her face to indicate how wide he smiled. He didn't stop there and claimed they were both smiling in the picture. Now, staring at the blank frame on the wall, where their wedding photo is supposed to be, she is informed that her husband's license plate and the company he worked for are fake. She tells the caller that they have no villa to aid in identifying him and the neighbors left without a trace, but wants to know if the investigation team can still find her husband. The caller, who is from the investigation team, after hearing this, decides they should take things step by step. He wants them to start by discussing the neighbors that disappeared. He wants to know every single detail about them that she can recall, so she does her best. Deep down, she does this because she wants a clear answer and not speculations on the one thing about her life that was hers, her marriage. It's crazy, but she isn't going to give it up. A few days later, at the investigation team's base, she meets up with the team. She asks them if they have found anything about her husband, a question that only gets silence as a response, until one of the team members, Huchana, speaks up. In her loudest tone, she demands to know what kind of scumbag Seor-young was living with and curses the man. Her colleague tries to calm her down and succeeds, even though she doesn't understand how he is so calm about this. Her colleague, Jung Pil-gyu, after handling his sister-in-law, turns to their client and introduces himself as the team leader of the analysis team. Their company is called Blast and is a private military contractor. They are authorized by the government to provide military services in conflict zones overseas, and they are currently meeting at an errand center owned by their company. This was his definition of keeping the introductions brief, that he has given right before he breaks it to her that they wouldn't be able to take on her case. Huchana can't believe her ears. She feels otherwise. But when Seor-young asks why they can't help her, she steps in and tells her side of the story. They looked into all she described about the neighbors, and everything she mentioned about them was fake. From schools to workplaces, everything was fabricated, but their crew made one severe by overlooking a very important detail. Remember, every detail about her neighbors was false, but the dog she made mention of wasn't. When they heard about it, they looked into it, and they discovered the dog was registered to an animal hospital, although the owner's name was different on the medical records. It was a 67-year-old woman named Kim Yeon-mi, whereas Seor-young is certain the dog was owned by a man. She believes they had gotten a different dog, but that is not the case. They have proof that they are on the right track, and Huchana shows it to her. After staring at the screen for a while, she admits that she can't see what's on it because her vision has not fully recovered. This makes Huchana feel she is being inconsiderate again. Long story short, the old lady, Kim Yeon-mi, has a son who they are certain wrote the National Intelligence Service entrance exam. People in that industry who serve as field agents operate with aliases. He suspects that her son passed the exam and infiltrated as a neighbor to Seor-young under a low-level field agent position. But before he can say more, she demands he explain things better to her. He then breaks it down that from the disappearance to buying and controlling an entire apartment building, a Black Ops agent of the National Intelligence Service is involved. The identity of the Black Ops is known only by the higher-ups, and these people are skilled at hiding their identities and carrying out missions without leaving a trail. He said they can't handle her care because if this is real, then she will never find the man who played her. Elsewhere, that same man is taking off his disguise after another seemingly successful job. He did this before a CCTV camera, which certain staff are in charge of whipping clean to ensure that they remain hidden. The staff in charge of watching over this agent, after all his years of watching him unmask, still sees the unmasking process as revolting. To him, it's like a snake shedding its skin. The guy's name is Wang Chang-na, and he wants to know if the agent he is monitoring got out safely. This agent is also their team leader, but they discuss so casually as he narrates how he ran without looking back for fear of getting caught. The team leader, Li Wuxin, aka Maka, is on his way back to base as his conversation with Wang continues. Wang admits that since he started working with him, he stopped trusting people and praises him for his top-tier acting skills. One of Wang's favorites is the mission where he acted so well that he thought Wuxin actually loved the target. He is certain that Seoryong, who they tagged Owl, loved Maka, and reveals that a month ago she caused a commotion at a local police station. She showed up soiled with blood she claimed belonged to her husband, getting Wuxin curious to know whose blood it was. It was hers, obviously, but she was able to use that to file a missing persons report that easily exposed his fake alias. Wang praises Seoryong for being smarter than they expected, offering to show him the footage of her that he pulled from the police station's CCTV camera. In a serious tone, Wuxin demands that he give him one reason why he would want to watch the footage. He claims he didn't care about her, and what they had was not a marriage. All she is to him is a target, and he played her husband because that was the role assigned to him. He is glad the pointless mission is finally over and doesn't see why Wang is bringing up the miserable experience. He advises him not to look back at that mission or even think about it. He is about to scold him more when he soon realizes he is asking all these questions, because he is still hung up on the fact that he got intimate with the target. Wuxin knows the lad is concerned because Seoryong is a civilian, and he feels like he broke the code. He is certain Wang will grow up to be even more pure and warns him never to speak of the owl to him again. He agrees before changing the topic, wanting to discuss Wuxin's resignation letter before he angrily ends the call. To him, his team leader is overreacting. Even so, he plans on obeying him and shutting down anything that has to do with Seoryong. Deep down, he wishes that she forgets the heartless man soon, but we know she won't. Right now, she is meeting Huchana at a cafe to discuss him. She had told her she wanted to go to North Korea, and the analysis team member felt she wanted to defect to North Korea. She is doing this to step up her game, certain that for her to handle matters of the National Intelligence Service, she needs to aim from the international crime level. She has already started doing her findings on the best ways into the country and called Huchana for her advice, since she came from there. She also wants her to play Fed, something she feels fired up about. Initially, her plan doesn't sound crazy, until she confesses that she plans to commit a lot of crimes and get caught by the NIS. This part of the plan makes her guest feel uncomfortable, but she is sure it will make the man whose trail they cannot follow come for her. A few days after she cooks up this plan, Seoryong is on her way to North Korea through the Paju Unification Bridge. By the border were two soldiers discussing their day, while she zooms towards the border, with her mind on her discussion with Huchana some days back. She recalls that she was asked what would happen if they met after she got captured, and she replies with the song's lyrics that left her puzzled. In the present day, one of the guards notices her going James Bond as she charges at them and orders her to stop, but she refuses to listen. They plan on hurriedly stopping her before she makes it into North Korea, something she is actually looking forward to. She wants them to hurriedly catch her and take her to her husband, and feels she has done enough when she looks at the rearview mirror and sees that the officers have stopped chasing her. One is trying to catch his breath, and the other is calling for a medic. She is annoyed that if things continue like this, she will reach North Korea without getting caught. She is too busy thinking about this that she fails to look where she is going and crashes. It's unplanned, but because of the crash, other soldiers are able to apprehend her. They inform her that she has been placed on emergency arrest, while she tries to calm down, glad that she didn't lose her life as she thought she would a second back. By the time the dust settles, Seoryong is brought in for questioning. To an extent, things go as planned when two NIS agents from the Counterintelligence Department come to interrogate her. They inform her that she is charged with violating the national security law and damaging military facilities, information that makes her smile. They try to see if she understands the severity of her crime, like how nearby facilities will be closed until after the investigation, but she couldn't care less, replying them nonchalantly. She then claims she didn't commit any crime, but the agent argues that according to their law, an attempt to commit the crime is also punishable. He further warns her to speak wisely, since whatever she says from that moment onward will have an impact on whether the charges will be filed. His next question is aimed at figuring out why she tried to defect to North Korea. Since she doesn't respond, he goes to the next question, demanding to know who Kim Hyun is. He claims he wants to know because he read her file and she mentioned the name in the earlier police investigation a few hours before they stepped in. She replies that he is her husband, but he claims she is listed as unmarried in her records. He drops all he knows about the man in question, specifically focusing on how they got married and whether or not he was the person she claimed disappeared. They want to know if he is the reason why she wants to defect. Suddenly, she quotes a line he normally used, causing the men to panic. She then adds that she intended to report her spy of a husband, but didn't know his name and face, but personally wants them to find that out for her. According to her, it is her husband who defected and disappeared, but they have to ensure they don't lose track of him or they'll have a serious problem. She keeps trying to use the whole spy thing to get them to break, but even though they feel like she is unto them, they stand their ground. She isn't done talking when a call comes in from the deputy director. As the NIS agent takes the call, she scans the room, probably feeling like someone outside is watching them. As the call ends, both agents stand, announcing their plan to wrap up the investigation there. Also, her attempted defection is to be dismissed on the grounds of mental instability, but she will be fined 10 million won for damaging military property. What was she thinking, expecting people in Wushin's workplace to give him up? Even though she refuses to accept this decision, demanding that they dig deeper, they ignore her plea and thank him for his cooperation during the investigation. With the way things are going, she decides to drop the act and openly accuse them of trying so hard to cover something up. She expected a spy-catching department to be more competent than this. Away from them, she threatens to break the mirror in the interrogation room if the person monitoring her doesn't come out. She doesn't like the idea of someone playing hide-and-seek with her and not letting her join in the fun. Eventually, the men decide to stop Seoryong, demanding that she end her joke. She refuses to accept an accusation that she is joking when she is sure it's them that are joking. She has had enough and gets hostile, demanding to know why they are protecting and hiding Kim Hyun, who we all know as Wushin. All she is asking for is a basic investigation, but what she gets is the agents questioning her sanity by asking her if she has taken her medicine. They heard she stopped taking it and accuse her of imagining her husband left her, but she doesn't know what medication they are talking about. Last she checked, she wasn't sick, therefore she doesn't need medicine. But they claim they spoke to her doctor about her health. Hearing that confuses her even more, until she spots a piece of paper on the table and reads it. Seoryong is surprised to see that it's her medical records from Hanmaeum Psychiatric Hospital, the hospital she has been visiting since childhood. We know that's the next place she is visiting. Now don't we? At the hospital, her doctor is currently dozing, while news about her little stunt is on. Soon, he is woken up by her arrival. She came with a gift, but he is not only shocked because she is here, but also because she can see. When he asks about her eyes, she casually replies that they are getting better and she is lucky it wasn't anything incurable. She makes tea for them, yet that doesn't help him calm down. So he tries to start a conversation with her. However, the mistake he makes is asking about her husband, and Seoryong tells him he ran away. He did that to her, even after she was kind, gentle, and obedient like he taught her to be. She acted like a puppy and was soft, sweet, and playful, but that wasn't enough. The more she confesses, the more uncomfortable he feels, but she doesn't care. From the onset, she has tried to live a decent life. Even when she quit gymnastics and got expelled from high school, she tried to live decently and took up work as a caregiver. After everything she had done, she landed here, not knowing where she went wrong. She also doesn't know why. People bring children into the world only to abandon them, promise love and then run away, care for someone and still betray them. But most of all, she can't understand why the good doctor stabbed her in the back. The old man is visibly panicking, trying to avoid her question, but she isn't buying his act. To add to his fears, she talks about how in the past, the mafia rid traitors by serving them poisoned black tea. Is that what he is drinking now or not? He doesn't know, but immediately drops the cup and starts trying to cough out what he has drunk. He feels like he is dying, but she doesn't care. She wants to know if he diagnosed her as a schizophrenic patient. She also wants to know who told him to do it, since she suspects it has something to do with her husband. She stomps on the doctor, urging him to tell her anything he knows, but he really doesn't know anything. He claims he only did as he was told, after they promised him they wouldn't harm her. He sounds honest enough for her to believe, so she lets him go and takes a sip of the same coffee she served him. He obviously feels like a fool now, so when she asks where the people that confronted him came from, he hurriedly responds. They told him they were from a government organization, and even dropped a business card for a publishing company. The thought that these people adopt disguises now comes back to her mind. All she is doing is trying to hold on to the belief that her husband exists. But the more she searches for him, the more her quiet denial of reality begins to unravel. The web that man wove was obvious all along, but only she was too blind to see it. She beats herself up for being naive, and as she leaves the doctor's office, she assures him that today will be their last session. Why? Because it was he who taught her to wear the mask of kindness. He doesn't understand what Seoryong is saying until she tells him that she has finally decided to break the mask he wore her. She wanted to live kindly and be loved, but nothing was ever real. Not even her married life. Her happiest time was real. If all those happy times were just part of someone's ploy, then in the entire world, the only thing that is free of lies is her unmasked self. With that realization, she bids him farewell. Tossing away her mask and facing reality didn't stop her nightmares of a love that once was. By morning, she is at the cafe where she meets with Huchana, and she wants to know if Seoryong took a bullet. She replies that although her body didn't take any hits, her bank account took a huge blow. She actually paid the fine of 10 million won. Huchana is pained by the amount lost and wants to know if she called her here for another crazy scheme. Yup, her new plan is crazy. Even crazier than the last. She doesn't know anyone connected to this, but wants to kidnap someone to hold hostage. Kidnap? That's far from Huchana's line of business, but she keeps going, suggesting that the higher the status, the better. She is sure that way the government will have to send a negotiation specialist like the deputy director of the National Intelligence Service. Such a wild idea, but she's on the right track. Unknown to her, just as she is thinking about this, Wooin gets a call from the same deputy director. Shockingly, he was avoiding this call, scolding himself for not getting rid of the phone long ago. He decides to take the call, not minding the presence of his tattoo artist. When he picks up, he mimics the deputy director, assuming he wants him to return quickly, but that's not why she called. She wants to discuss his resignation letter. It is rare for them to get someone with his years of experience, and he is choosing to resign at a time when they have just lost 2 intelligence agents. She now wants to know if he really thinks she'll process a resignation letter that was poorly written with the excuse of personal reasons at a time like this. He claimed he was mentally ill, but she wants to know the type of mental illness he is suffering from. In his defense, all this while he has not been sane, but she doesn't buy it. She wants to know why he is retiring after a mission ended, but he repeats that it's mental illness. His illness is so bad that he finds it hard, even in his personal time, to leave his face without a silicone mask. At first, he felt it was a work issue, but the hospital says he has obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's left him so broken that he will be picking on his own face and having nightmares of the faceless monster. Even if he wants to come back, he claims he can't do espionage again because of the tattoo he just got. She curses him for treating his body that way when it belongs to the state. Wooin lets her know that if she isn't calling to return his face, she should stop calling him because he is sick of wearing this face. He doesn't look like he is going to change his mind, prompting her to try something different by reminding him of the document he has been chasing. She wants to know if he is just going to give it up like that, but he hasn't. It's just that after 10 years of changing faces, he is the first to get tired. Even after taking care of Seoryong, he failed and ended up with nothing, leaving him in this frustrated state. Finally, she claims to understand, promising that when she becomes the head of the NIS, she will pass it down to him, allowing him to use his face and real name. That's enough to convince him. But before ending the call, she asks him for a favor that doesn't include a mask, one that has to do with Blast Corporation. In the next scene, Seoryong is still at the cafe with Huchana, discussing her plan to kidnap someone important. From the knowledge she has acquired from her time at Blast Corp, she wants to drop a few tips for her. While they discuss, the guy at the counter notices them, believing they are getting along. Meanwhile, they are talking about the best ways to kidnap. It's something Seoryong feels she doesn't need to learn, but Huchana is giving her these tips because she reminds her of her younger sister she left in North Korea. Unfortunately for her, she has given Seoryong an idea. At Blast Corp, there are plenty of men. She thinks living and working with them will help her forget the man who hurt her and give her freedom again. Along with this benefit comes the chance to use their manpower to help her as backup for the kidnapping. By playing her cards well, she knows she can use this to her advantage. All of a sudden, she wants to confirm if Peligyu is truly the head of Blast Corporation, and she agrees he is. He also happens to be her brother-in-law, which is news to Seoryong, who looks like she plans on using the fact that they are family to her advantage. Sadly, she does, kicking her plan into motion by meeting Peligyu privately. She starts her evil plan by talking about his relationship with Huchana, but he does not say anything to her. Seeing that he is silent, she informs him that she called him here to trouble him. By troubling him, she plays a recording of her discussion with his sister-in-law some days before she tried going across the North Korean border. She plays to the point where Huchana suggests the best route to take, and that's enough to incriminate her. He starts panicking when he hears this, a reaction she wants, helping her to freely tell him that the next time she tries to cross the border and is caught, she might drag his sister-in-law down with her. It will help if she claims that after Chana left North Korea, she helped her get in. It's a cowardly thing to do, but she doesn't stop there, threatening to add that Pilgyu, her brother-in-law, is a former NIS agent. She further probes him, hitting every vein possible when she explains that he is a lover boy who is housing 2 escapees and wants to marry one. Seor-young points out that if Chana gets dragged down, his wife will be taken down with her, prompting him to ask what she wants. Well, after a quick look into the company and finding out the variety of military-grade services it provides, along with the income it makes and the VIP protection services it renders, she came up with an idea. Since the company is so big that NIS patronizes it due to its lack of manpower, she needs a job. He plainly tells her he can't give her one, solely because the company only hires those with military skills, and she lacks military skills. There are a lot of options for them to pick from, but just to be sure, he seeks to know if she has any military special skills. Before she can answer that, he assumes she wants to ask him to murder someone, when he has 2 escapees on his hand already. Luckily for him, she has no killer intent, but that only makes him suspect she has worse intentions in mind. She doesn't. All she wants is a housekeeping job, one that she attends an interview for a few days later. With a recommendation from him, she is permitted to start work on Monday, cleaning and doing laundry services. Her employer is actually glad they finally have a young woman joining their company. Young women normally avoid this kind of job. He is happy that their employees will finally enjoy training, with her around. She doesn't even pay attention to that comment on her good looks. Instead, she wants to know if there are dangerous weapons around because they work with soldiers. In a bid to help her feel at ease, he promises her that there are men there who will look out for her. But he doesn't know her. She isn't scared. In fact, she thinks it's him who should be afraid. Seor-young's response won't change the outcome of the interview. That's why she leaves the office thinking about how the road ahead is too long. She just started the journey and surprisingly gets a call from Chana after blackmailing her brother-in-law. She tells her that she just finished her interview, wanting to know if she is at the company. During her call, she walks by Wooin, her husband who disappeared, and she doesn't know it's him. It's funny how they almost clash at the beginning of this journey. They didn't clash again for a whole month of her working for Blast, and most of her days were peaceful. She did her work diligently, maintaining such a good relationship with her colleagues that some actually cared about her. One of those employees urges her to finish what she is doing and come take her meal. That's exactly what she plans to do, but as she walks past one of the rooms, she hears the employees chatting. It's hard not to eavesdrop, so she doesn't resist the urge, listening to them talk about some special security team. The boys hype the team so much, reminding Seor-young of the day Chana bothered her about work and how she was coping. She quickly switches the topic and makes it about Chana. She hadn't been seeing her as much as she expected when they were at work, but all she has to say is that their new team leader was a jerk. Those were the same words one of the guys used, meaning Chana might also be in the special security team. It's the only team she has been unable to get information on, and even the tasks they do are top secret. All of a sudden, her train of thought is disrupted by one of the employees trying to start a fight. The employee he is threatening to beat up knows he is doing this so he can get picked for the special security team. It really looks like he's about to break loose, with all the non-military staff fleeing the scene. All but Seor-young, who sees Mrs. Kim get hurt and intervenes to salvage the situation, spilling food on the guy who initiated the fight. He's furious about this, yet all she can say is, "Lunch break is over," right before she lands in the manager's office. He scolds her for adding this to her rude and reckless slate, explaining that in this company revolving around combat personnel, people like them exist only to assist. To her, he's wasting his time, and she suggests they get someone to check on Mrs. Kim. He dismisses the suggestion, pointing out that the man she pissed off is hot-headed and might come after her. He advises her not to provoke him for the time being, after which he dismisses her for the day. On her way out, she cleans up with the towel he tossed at her earlier, getting to the elevator with a sad look on her face. Trying to save Mrs. Kim might have delayed her plans, but now she doesn't know when she will be able to kidnap the deputy director or find her husband. She wonders if she should come up with another plan, but she knows there's no better way than this. All her thoughts wave aside as the elevator door opens. It's full, meaning she has to wait a little longer. Wooin, aka Kim Hyun, is on the elevator. He must recognize her, but he keeps his cool and asks her to get on, holding the elevator for her. After a bit, he realizes she is not getting on and rudely tells her to forget it. He closes the door when their eyes lock, a few seconds before the door is finally shut. our female lead takes notice of two people discussing about the new team leader. The rumor is that he spent a long time in Africa, joined the military the moment he became an adult, and skyrocketed in the ranks in little to no time. He's really only 31 years old and is already a menace with amazing feats under his belt. Our girl moves on ahead doing her cleaning job, and the thought sticks to her mind. A nightmare of a team leader. At a later time, Han Seo-young has an altercation with that hot-headed agent. He orders her to wash his clothes again for like the 100th time. The agent claims the clothes still smell like food waste, even though it's been a week since she poured it on him. Our female lead finds it strange because she's washed it countless times over the week. The agent wants to know if she knows his name. Han Seo-young points out his name on the training uniform, assuring him she could read Hangul. The young man stares in her direction, looking extra saucy. He has this unusual smile plastered across his face, and he engages her in conversation. At his question, our girl just stands and stares at him weirdly. He gets riled up just thinking messy thoughts as he looks back at her. The hot-headed agent asks if she's got any issue with her eyes or anything like that. Out the blue, she asks if he's thinking of sleeping with her. The question stuns the young man. He couldn't make sense of the fact she's being so brutally honest and straightforward. One more time, our girl asks him. This time his cheeks burn a bright red as his lust is at its peak. He bursts out in full-blown honesty, stating his desire to lay with her. Han Seo-young refuses his offer. Makes it clear she has very peculiar taste and that she's not particularly single. Everything sounds so wild to him. First, the fact she's super specific about the shape of the peepee she wants. And even worse, the fact she claimed to have a husband. He screams out, totally pissed she's only mentioning she's got a husband now. He's being very loud, but our female lead keeps her cool and returns a cold stare in his direction before leaving for the shower room to execute an order the agent barked at her. Before she's out of sight, he asks one more time if she really has a husband, and our female lead affirms she does, and dashes out leaving the hot-headed agent all alone. Han Seo-young makes her way to the shower room. She ponders on a whole lot as she strides onward. Her eyes take notice of something. It's a man in the shower. Guess who it is? It's Lee Woo-shin. He's super surprised to see her, but he keeps his composure and even invites her to join him in the shower. Our girl wonders when he even came in. She's certain she didn't hear a sound. He asks Han Seo-young to leave before the other agents come around. She pulls down her face cap to avoid eye contact, but something piques her attention. Her eyes light up at the realization of something familiar. He claims it's embarrassing how she's staring so blatantly. Our female lead draws closer and looks at his body like she's just witnessed the big reveal of an exquisite work of art. She's practically centimeters away from him, and that's when it clicks. Our male lead recognizes her. His eyes widen. Hers widen too. Could it be? Do they both recognize each other or what? Lee Woo-shin towers over Han Seo-young and questions why she's in the men's shower room. Our girl keeps a straight face, staring him dead in the eye like it's totally normal to be in the shower with a supposed stranger. After a few seconds of awkward silence, she apologizes and attempts to leave, and in that very moment, other agents make their way into the shower room, making a whole lot of noise. The agents discuss about their colleague Sung Wook-chan, who's being super rude to our female lead. At the sound of their voices, our male lead leans closer to Han Seo-young. Our girl politely requests he moves away, but he pleads for a few more seconds to be able to think things through. He knows just how wild this scene looks right now, and it's a peculiar position for these two. He points out how crazy it looks. He wouldn't have an explanation for his colleagues if they questioned him. One of the agents screams out at his fellows about a colleague leaving his name tag in the bathroom. Lee Woo-shin tries to take off her face cap in an attempt to get a better look at her face. He wants her to state her purpose here, and she gently informs him she's only here to cook and do laundry. After spilling that information, Han Seo-young goes on the defensive. She claims it's not a big deal to run into someone naked, and her words get a bewildered look on his face as his reaction. Our female lead is visibly uncomfortable with the current situation than all he's questioning her about. Yep, it's a pretty wild one. A naked team leader with a literal maid or cleaner in the shower room, the whole organization will be shaken. Our male lead points out he's not exactly comfortable with the fact she's staring. Her eyes take notice of something peculiar. Seo-young successfully turns the switch and bolts out of the shower room, leaving Woo-shin alone with his thoughts. Without a doubt, he recognizes her, and now she's on his radar. Later on, the team leader contacts his tech guy and asks for an update on his findings regarding the Blast organization. Our male lead would like to know why Owl is here. He doesn't look pleased talking about it, though. Literal's clouds of irresponsibility and inefficiency gather on Wan Chang's head as he's pressured by the team leader for information about Han Seo-young, aka Owl. He clicks and her details pop up. Lee Woo-shin asks for her info. The tech guy informs our male lead that our female lead applied to work at Blast a month ago. She presently works in the logistics department as a kitchen and laundry attendant. Wan Chang believes she shouldn't be able to recognize the team leader since he's not putting on a mask, neither is his voice the same. The tech guy is psyched to hear about Han Seor-young. He goes on to inform the boss that Owl was caught trying to cross the border to North Korea. The agents had interrogated her and eventually released her with literally no punishment. They've concluded she's some sort of spy. The news makes our male lead tense. Han Seor-young in his books is just a person who's always lonely and super gentle, a woman who's lived a monotonous life to the point of boredom. Seor-young is more affectionate than anyone Lee Woo-shin knows, kind and loyal. That's what she is, a shining light in his dark, dark world. With all certainty, he claims she's not a threat. Neither does he think she's a spy. The agents on comms think she's probably lost her edge since her husband's disappearance. The tech guy butts in, claims it's a good thing no one cares about Owl or her husband Kim Hyun anymore. The boss is not convinced. He orders an investigation be done just to clear every doubt. Lee Woo-shin stares into the nothingness, hoping dearly that it's all sorted soon so Han Seor-young can disappear from his sight totally. Our female lead goes back to working like it's a normal day, though her mind is miles away from the carrot she's chopping. Han Seor-young couldn't stop thinking about the encounter she had in the shower room. The thought of seeing his naked body made her shake and tremble. She could recall the shape of his manhood, and it reminded her of Kim Hyun. Her colleague calls out to her, pulling her out of her thoughts. The lady asks if our girl could do a quick delivery. Apparently, they've got a few agents working in the field today and they need to be fed. All this being said, the thought of her husband is all that's on her mind, and Han Seor-young believes he's too different from Kim Hyun. Our female lead makes her way to the vehicle, and as fate would have it, Lee Woo-shin is her partner for the trip. He'll be driving her to deliver the meal to his comrades. The young man has a cheeky smile plastered across his face. It's like he's super pleased to be heading out with her today. It's definitely going to be an interesting trip. On the way to the site, our protagonists are in the vehicle together. For some reason, she thought his face seemed familiar in the shower room, but it just didn't click for her now. She's heard he's the new team leader of the Special Task Force team, and the experience she had with him in the shower room was more or less a confirmation of the several rumors she's heard. In the car, he turns his gaze in her direction and requests to know just how difficult her job is. She affirms it's something she could manage. Woo-shin would like to know how well she knew team leader Young Pil-gyu, since he heard she got a recommendation from him. Our girl didn't see any reason to give him any more information about her affinity with Pil-gyu, but he pushes for a response. Lee Woo-shin claims he's only here to fill in for a lady who got hospitalized because of a back injury. If I'm not mistaken, that's Mrs. Kim. Once more, our guy requests an honest response from our female lead concerning the question he asked. With the little he said she could deduce or interpret his words like he's threatening to take her along with him for business trip overseas if she didn't respond properly. So our girl yields. Though she's pissed, Han Seor-young informs him she knows team leader Jung Pil-gyu personally. Our male lead claims he's aware Pil-gyu is married and even has kids. He throws out a question that practically stuns her. Lee Woo-shin wants to know if she has a thing for married men. At his question, our girl practically roars in pure, unfiltered rage. Lee Woo-shin claims he's not a man of many words, so he'd be upfront about his words and thoughts. While he speaks, she listens, even though our girl didn't like the situation in the car right now. It's like he's got her backed up against the wall with his questions, jovial attitude, and composure too. Han Seor-young spills some more information, brings to his notice that she actually knows Young Pil-gyu's sister-in-law more than Pil-gyu himself. Lee Woo-shin asks if she's aware Chana is a super skilled hacker. He points out how much of a menace Pil-gyu's sister-in-law is. In 2016, something wild happened. The State Bank of Bangladesh almost lost $1 million due to hacking. It was discovered that the North Korean government were behind it, and at the center of it all was a 16-year-old girl. Yep, he's talking about Hu Chana. Now his curiosity is piqued. He'd like to know how she met with a special talent like Pil-gyu's sister-in-law. Han Seor-young keeps a cool head. She's not about to spill anything about her personal life to him. Our male lead assumes it's something she's not comfortable talking about. Maybe because our girl had Chana illegally dig up someone's personal information. She doesn't respond right away. She stays mute for a while, so he proceeds to inform her he'll just write the list of overseas trips, even though he's aware just how crazy and dangerous the Special Task Force's team trip is, especially for weak folk just like our female lead. He speaks with a cunning smile on his face, like a villain's who's just laid out his master plan to a helpless victim. Lee Woo-shin lays off trying to reason with her and just asks her to be honest with him so she won't have to go for the trip and suffer. His words have her battling thoughts in her head. All manner of theories of the several diverse, horrible things they could do on their trip had her shaken to the bone. With a pretty straight, emotionless look on his face, Lee Woo-shin tries once more to get answers off her. Seor-young thinks she's hit the jackpot because that's exactly what she wants. Our male lead points out how the NIS had tried and failed to recruit Huchana, so he's still wondering how on earth she got acquainted to the national-level hacker. Finally, she speaks, but it's not looking normal. Han Seoryong has a crazed look in her eyes and she claims the NIS are trash, since they couldn't manage to recruit Huchana, and even goes on to ask his opinion on the matter. Okay, the look in her eyes all point to a psychotic direction. Our female lead is definitely not normal. What do you think? They arrive at the destination for the delivery and our guy sits back in the car cheering her to go on ahead. Han Seoryong completely ignores him. He's being so tiresome and she'd rather not push for any more drama. While she's striding ever forward, she thinks about their little chit-chat in the car earlier and wonders if she should have been more rude just to secure her name on the list for a business trip abroad with hopes of playing her cards right and ultimately finding an ally there. Someone walks up to her and pulls her out of her thoughts. He's the guy supposed to pick up the lunch from the lunch boy. He appreciates her for the food and advises her to be super careful on her way back. At first, she turns to leave, but something pulls her back. She could smell Kim Hyun's scent off this man, and it was too strong to ignore. The man moves on ahead and stops when he notices he's being tailed. He turns in her direction and questions her. Our girl pleads with him to ignore her presence. She'd like to watch him eat the lunchbox for a personal reason. Han Seoryong claims she's really just curious about his eating habits and even promises not to bother him. The young man is against the idea, warns her about the noise and danger inside. The young man proceeds to request for her contact info with hopes of reaching her later. He's got this lust-filled gaze set on her. Back in car earlier, she'd called the NIS trash for not being able to recruit Huchana, and her words met with dead silence from Lee Woo-shin at first. After a few seconds of silence, he asks if she really lost all her savings to the NIS, but she assures him what was lost was worth more than all her money. He shrugs it off, trying to clear up the tense atmosphere, and asks if Huchana has helped her catch the criminal yet. Han Seoryong couldn't make sense of it. She's wondering if he cared about her husband or something. Lee Woo-shin seems rather confident that she hasn't caught the culprit yet. With the way things are, he feels he might have misread Han Seoryong and even underestimated her in the process. Our female lead makes it clear she has no intention of giving up on the search for her husband. No matter how long it takes, she won't stop till Kim Hyun is found and punished too. Presently, though, she's got her sight fixed on the agent she just handed the food delivery to, and she's doing an analysis of him in her mind. She rejects his request for her contact info and excuses herself. As she takes her leave, it weighs heavy. In her heart, just how much she longed for Kim Hyun. The humiliation intensifies and the resentment towards her husband grows, even though she's super pissed to the point she could probably commit murder. Our girl still misses Kim Hyun so much it's practically driving her crazy. While she battles with her emotions, Lee Woo-shin casually approaches her and asks about the agent she gave the food a few moments ago. She points out how he told her he'll be waiting in the car, but he persists, claims his curiosity got the better of him, so he couldn't sit still. While he smiles and speaks, rage was bubbling inside Han Seoryong. His indifferent eyes reflecting some sort of sinister pleasure is getting on her nerves. It's crazy, but since Kim Hyun's disappearance, so much stress has been built up that it propels all kinds of inappropriate thoughts through Seoryong's mind. Standing across from Lee Woo-shin, her mind is galaxies away from all he's saying. Our girl keeps mute even when he's asking her questions. She bursts out speaking at length about how much she misses her husband Kim Hyun, even though she's enraged at the fact he tricked her. But she confesses she followed the agent earlier because of his scent. Our male lead couldn't understand all she was going on about, and she just walks right by him muttering about how this particular scent got the craziest reaction out of her. It made no sense, but he keeps his gaze set on her as she expresses herself freely. Finally, Lee Woo-shin more or less concludes she's under the influence of a hard substance to be acting the way she is. Later on that day, the two young people are in the car and Han Seoryong rejects the sympathetic treatment, claims it's too early for that. Our male lead assures her it's a lost cause trying to find someone like Kim Hyun. Our female lead isn't shaken. She's convinced she'll meet her husband someday, somehow, someway. Their car heads out. In the car, our male lead proceeds to properly introduce himself as the head of the special security team. These two have a long way to go from here. She's completely clueless of the fact the young man sitting with her in the car is the same man she's longing for so deeply. Our male lead questions if she's using marijuana. The question ticks her off and she storms off, demanding he puts her on the business trip list. Lee Woo-shin attempts to disagree with her, but he's hit with an egg that bursts on impact. The projectile stuns our female lead. It came from the angry protesters. They march forward looking very angry and yelling at the top of their voices with their cardboards and posters in hand. More eggs are thrown at our protagonists. But with great speed and precision, Han Seoryong pulls on our male lead and they make their escape from the ambush. As they're making their escape, he still asks one more time if she takes marijuana. Our girl doesn't think it's a priority right now, seeing as they're being chased by angry protesters. Han Seoryong affirms she doesn't do drugs. They get to the car and our male lead reiterates her statement about her eyes rolling back. She hurriedly pulls on the car door handle. Lee Woo-shin needs her to make it make sense to him. With serious haste in her voice, our girl informs him it's her husband's scent that makes her go crazy. Han Seoryong leans closer to him and demands he hands over the car keys, since he's so relaxed, knowing fully well that armed protesters are moving closer every second they waste. Woo-shin grips on an egg and bursts it in his fist. He points out how strange it is to follow a stranger just because of a scent, claims the scent coming off the guy she followed was nothing but trash. With that said, he believes she's not to be trusted because of how twisted she is. Han Seoryong makes it clear the scent she's following isn't the scent of just any man, but the scent of her husband, Kim Hyun. Seoryong is affirmative of how perfect and spotless her husband is, and assures Lee Woo-shin it's got nothing to do with her efficiency at work. Our male lead takes it to thought for a while before making his decision. Seems she'll be tagging along for the business trip after all. A few days later, in Bangkok, Thailand, the agents have made their way here for a business trip, which is more or less a mission. Apparently, they're here to protect a drug dealer. It's all spelt out in the non-disclosure agreement they signed before coming here, but somehow our female lead still asks for clarification from Lee Woo-shin. Our male lead informs her the client made about $8 billion from drug trafficking, so he's a pretty big deal. To get just how crazy that is, this client made over 10 trillion in their currency. So yeah, he's earned a top spot in the Interpol's Red Notice list. With the help of their special ops team, the client's been able to avoid capture for 10 years. It's crazy. One of the agents asks if Han Seoryong likes money, and she doesn't hesitate to inform him she's not particularly moved by funds. He assumes she'll probably quit when she gets back to their organization. He knows how it goes in this line of work. Most people who work with crazy criminals are desperate for money, and eventually they freak out, turn pale, or take off in panic. Our female lead shrugs it off, ventures to move on and start cleaning up. The agent with her finds it crazy how she's so relaxed. Han Seoryong smirks and proceeds to inform him she believes this place is a gold mine. He's completely lost track of this lady now, questions clouding his mind. Our girl believes it's a gold mine, the kind of mine the NIS would love. She's pleased because this company is way worse than she'd anticipated. Later on that evening, someone walks up behind her and questions her about the NDA again. It's Lee Woo-shin. She turns her gaze away from him and affirms she signed the non-disclosure agreement. He believes she'd been briefed on the overall nature of the work, so he's completely lost as to how she's still in her room cleaning. Woo-shin claims she must have heard about the several filthy things this place is involved in, so he'd like to know why she's still here. Why throw herself into this mess? Han Seoryong keeps a straight face, lets out a sigh, and informs him she's only cleaning right now because of how atrocious the hygiene is here. Her answer leaves him completely speechless. He makes it clear her job description here is to help out with the terrible, terrible stuff they've come here to do. Seoryong claims she's only here to cook for guys who are involved in drug trafficking. He points out that people could actually be taken out in their line of work. He's starting to get frustrated with how casual she's being about their job. Han Seoryong states how it was his decision to give her this job, but Lee Woo-shin is pissed off. The fact all she wants to do is cook and clean even at a place like this is just crazy, right? Housewife syndrome or something. Lee Woo-shin seems pretty offended. She keeps a straight face as she's equally annoyed with him. He walks off, and she can't help but wonder how unpleasant it always is when their paths cross. It's becoming a struggle enduring it, but she knows just how much of a goldmine this place is, and she's not about to let it slip out of her hands. Han Seoryong plays along pretty well, taking on the role of an active maid, and even asks what did he like for breakfast the next morning. With the knowledge and ideas flowing freely in her mind, our girl has no intention of parting ways with Lee Woo-shin. At a later date, our girl goes shopping with an overexcited Huchana. It's almost like the young hacker is a little kid on a field trip as she stares so intently on the things around her. Chana informs Han Seoryong that very dangerous men are close by, and our female lead is amused by the news. Her amusement stuns the hacker. Seoryong is happy because she knows quite well that her husband's an NIS agent, so she's certain he'd despise her appearance here. Hu Chana makes it clear how scary looking our female lead is when she goes full villain mode with her evil smile. The hacker couldn't make sense of the fact Han Seoryong was still on the hunt for her husband till now. Our girl claims every single moment spent with her husband was nothing less of a paradise for her. The statement leaves Huchana speechless as she observes our girl completely lost. in remembrance of her sweet, sweet husband. Han Seo-young claims there are times she feels like her husband is right next to her, even though it's ridiculous to think like that. She'd like to know if Hu Chana thinks she's crazy or completely lost her mind with the whole disappearing husband situation. The hacker just states her thoughts and feelings clearly. She believes Han Seo-young is living in serious doubt about her reality as a whole. Someone casually walks up to our female lead and compliments her stunning looks, and our girl is completely lost. No response comes to mind, so she asks Chana for a little help. Finally, Han Seo-young accepts the gift the little kid handed over. She holds onto the bead-like bracelet and suddenly feels way off. Without hesitation, she calls on Hu Chana so they could hurry back to their resident area in haste. Without speaking too long, she pulls Hu Chana along, away from the supposed danger zone. It's not quite clear as to why, but our female lead had a pretty bad feeling. At a different scene, team leader Wooin and Hu Chana are together, and the hacker is working on her system. He's just there watching. Chana affirms all she needs is 7 minutes max, and he wastes no time to engage her in conversation. He asks about her involvement with Han Seo-young's case. The hacker isn't at all fazed, as she believes her decision was the right one. Lee Woo-shin assures her they will all do this job, even though it's a terrible one. Entangled in serious drug trafficking, they're also responsible for securing an escape route. He'd like to have her take on the matter, what she considers a bad thing, but she keeps a cool head. Hu Chana claims it's the usual work, nothing new. Lee Woo-shin remains super calm too. He's trying his possible best to wrap his head around the personality of Han Seo-young. Bringing the owl on the trip was definitely intentional. He'd hoped she would come to their world and witness brutality, and a world without morality with hopes that she'll probably leave on her own accord. Woo-shin could recall how their marriage was, how she'd been kind-hearted and anxious all the time. Because of his past experience with her playing the role of her husband, he'd assumed she would be easy to manipulate, but now he's slowly realizing our girl was only weak to Kim Hyun. She's nothing like that around other people. It's like she's a ticking time bomb prepared to explode at any point in time. Lee Woo-shin turns his gaze towards Hu Chana and asks a pretty random question about our female lead, because he's still trying to wrap his head around how bold she's become in such a short time. The hacker gets riled up. Her thoughts scramble as she begins to wonder if the team leader has somehow found out Han Seo-young's grand goal. The young lady wonders if their plan is screwed already. For any reason her Unnie is caught by this young man, then there's going to be serious trouble. He just stands over Hu Chana, wondering what the issue is with Han Seo-young, seeing as she just goes about her duties like it's totally normal to serve very nice breakfast to criminals, like they were her loving family. The words keep the hacker lost for words. Lee Woo-shin goes on and on about how he thinks something is serious wrong with Han Seo-young. He claims the person who ripped her off for her money is nothing but trash. He concludes in his heart that our female lead must have got tangled up with the scum of this earth to be so ridiculously serious. Hu Chana rages, rains curses on Kim Hyun, claims she'll mess him up real bad when she crosses path with Hand, and proceeds to focus up on the job at hand with intensity. She confesses to bringing Han Seo-young here for the purpose of linking her up with one of the young, fit guys, with hopes that something will spark between them so our female lead could finally move on. She's said quite enough now. The stuff she's working on has loaded up already, so the team leader asks her to leave. As Hu Chana steps out, she can't help but wonder why he showed so much interest in our female lead. Anyways, she wasn't the type of person to worry too much about stuff, so instead of thinking too hard, she decides to head out and get some nice ramen and enjoy the meal with Han Seo-young. Our male lead stands all alone in the office, eyes set on nothing but his gaze full of intensity. Later on that day, Hu Chana had successfully enjoyed her ramen alongside Seo-young, and she was competing filled. She had to lay back in her chair out of sheer delight. Our girl gets up wondering why the field agents weren't back yet. Hu Chana informs her they're probably going to be gone a while since they don't exactly know what it is they went out to do. Moving on, she questions Seo-young's relationship with the team leader. Our girl seems a bit rattled by the question and finds it a bit difficult to respond. Hu Chana notices her Unnie looks off and just shrugs it off. She doesn't want it to be awkward. Chana takes on the duty of doing the dishes and cleans up after them, so she suggests our girl heads upstairs to rest. Nighttime comes and our female lead couldn't help but feel super uneasy about the whole situation with Hu Chana earlier. Something piques her interest. It's a peculiar perfume scent, and she follows it as if being pulled somewhere by the smell. She's certain none of the agents here use a perfume that strong, so her curiosity hit its maximum. After trailing the scent for a while, the sight and view grips her with shock. Han Seo-young's eyes widen in disbelief. Right before her very eyes is the corpse of an agent. Just off the dead body, she could tell these agents were executed by someone who's extremely precise and powerful. The question arises, why and how did they let their guard down at night? In that moment, something clicks in her head. The thought of Chana flooded her mind, and fear was all she could feel at the moment. Seo-young hurriedly makes her way to Hoo-chana's room. On her way, she trips on another agent's lifeless corpse. It's another gory scene. With her hands trembling, she manages to take out the earbuds in the dead agent's ear with hopes that she'll be able to communicate with anyone who's still alive on comms. Seo-young does her best to pass the message on to whoever cares to listen. Her voice shakes and her body trembles as she speaks, informing whoever was on the other end of the comms that people were dead. Somewhere else in town, the team leader heard what she said. He's in a car right now, and he's surprised to hear Han Seo-young speak on the comms. Our female lead makes it clear the employees are all dead. It wasn't looking like there was any sign of resistance, but she could smell a very strong scent of perfume lingering. The team leader calms her down and requests a proper explanation on the situation. Lee Woo-shin points out the chances of Hoo-chana being alive being very slim. He proceeds to inform our girl she'd likely not make it out alive either, since in their field of work, witnesses were unheard of. The team leader is being brutally honest right now, and he levels with her, makes it clear she's just an ordinary civilian, so her chances of survival solely depends how well she listens to him moving forward. First order, she'll need a weapon, so he directs her to get one off the corpse of the agents who've been taken out. Seo-young doesn't hesitate to pick up a pistol. Lee Woo-shin orders she takes her mind off Hoo-chana for the while and flee for her dear life. He's confident that's the only way she'd make it out of there alive. Han Seo-young hesitates for a while, and he's on the comms barking out orders for her to get a move on if she really wants to make it out of there alive. The idea is for our girl to follow his lead and survive the terrible situation, but our girl's mind is tilting towards a different direction. He warns her one last time to flee the scene without thinking twice, but Seo-young felt everything resting on her head too heavily. It wasn't particularly easy for her to just leave Hoo-chana behind just because he ordered her to. It's almost like Kim Hyun was with her right now, standing right in front of her. Our girl rejects Woo-shin's orders, her eyes tear up, and she screams at her imaginary husband, beckoning on him not to abandon her. She's hell-bent on the fact nothing is convincing otherwise. Not Woo-shin, and definitely not her husband. Han Seo-young hurriedly makes her way for Hoo-chana's room, fueled with legitimate concern for her friend's well-being. Woo-shin claims he's seen plenty people like our girl who are fueled with pathetic emotions and act immaturely, and they all end up dead. Seo-young is quick to respond, assuring him she'll be the first of her kind. She's confident she'll be the first to survive a situation so terrible and grim. With this determination, our female lead moves glances around her environs and picks out a trail of blood on the kitchen floor which she follows, and eventually finds a wounded Chana laying on the floor. Han Seo-young leans closer, screams out in sheer horror at the sight of her friend practically bleeding out. Chana is still conscious, and she pleads with her last dying breath for Seo-young to flee. Our girl is being very difficult. She refuses to leave Chana to die here all alone. On the comms, Lee Woo-shin asks for her present location and directs her on what to do regarding the ghastly neck wound. He believes Hoo-chana is the primary target of the assassination. The special ops team had failed to realize how much of a key figure the hacker is for North Korea. The team leader believes the assassin must have started out his mission the moment she left for Bangkok. The fact the assassin didn't take her out with a single strike made it seem it's just the beginning. Seo-young couldn't understand it, but Woo-shin believes it's a torturing strategy. He's certain the assailants will be there pretty soon. His words get Seo-young in a state of alarm. She could sense it. Danger was lurking around. Han Seo-young understood the assassin wasn't too far away. In fact, she could sense the assailant drawing closer to the kitchen as the seconds go by. She's literally on the ground, keeping the pressure on Chana's neck and staring at the door, slowly anticipating the arrival of their nemesis. On the comms, Woo-shin instructs her to load the gun and prepare to aim. He makes it clear that the chances of her missing the target is high since it's her first time, but he advises he pulls the trigger multiple times, just with the hope that she'll actually hit something. He's not being very encouraging, and she doesn't like the fact he's got no faith in her, not even an ounce. Our male lead affirms he's almost at her location, so she just has to hold off till he gets there. Seo-young seems determined to do just that. She readies herself for the approaching nemesis, while Lee Woo-shin is presently dashing in his car to her location. Seo-young-shi was starting to question her reality as a whole. It's proving difficult to help Chana and still fend off a trained killer simultaneously, and she's about to give up, but she encourages herself one more time. New determination springs up from within. She's ready to go to all lengths to protect Hoo-chana. With her teeth, she loads the gun and aims at the door. Someone's at the door already. It's a lady with red heels, so I'm guessing the assassin's a woman. On the comms, Lee Woo-shin was following up on everything that's happening, so he instructs our female lead to stay steady, keep aiming, and wait till the enemy opens up the door. The plan is clear. The assassin swings the door open, and our female lead takes her down with several shots of her pistol. Seo-ryung's eyes are set laser-focused on the door, ready to execute her game plan with perfection. The door flings open, and she's hesitant because the woman in sight is nothing like she'd expected the assassin to be. She's a blondie, putting on casual clothes with a pretty massive smile on her face, like she's a little kid on a fun field trip. Our girl couldn't believe the blondie in front of her was actually the killer. The team leader screams out to her on comms, ordering her to take the shot. Seo-ryung hesitates for a second, and in a flash, the gun's flung out of her possession. The blondie has a crazed look in her eyes, like a feral predator ready to devour its unlucky prey. Lee Woo-shin calls out to our female lead, but gets no response from her end. The blondie destroys the earbuds and cuts off all communication from the team leader. Now she's towering over Han Seo-ryung Anda, wounded Hoo-chana with a blade in hand, and I can't help but feel it's the end for our female lead. Even though the situation seemed grim, Seo-ryung is not prepared to let go of Chana's neck because she knows her friend's life is hanging by a thread. The look in Blondie's eyes was nothing but evil. Everything flashes through our girl's mind. The employees laying lifeless after what seemed to be a perfectly executed murder. The strong perfume scent lingering nearby. The city Chana and our girl went out to. The prostitutes luring in tourists. And the hot pants and high heels were all the things she's seen over the past week. It's not normal, but Seo-ryung has built animalistic instincts over the past few years, and all she felt now was pure, unbridled rage directed towards this assassin, and she's going to let it all out. Our girl is determined to end this right here and right now. Wait a minute, didn't she lose her gun a moment ago? Han Seo-ryung claims the blondie isn't a woman, and as the enemy bolts in their direction with the weapon at hand, our female lead kicks the blondie hard between the legs and gets the reaction of a man who just got his balls shattered from the blondie. Now the enemy is within reach, at a fixed location, and our girl hurriedly loads the gun and takes the shot. It hits the target. Blondie is down and out. Against all odds, Seo-ryung is victorious against a trained assassin. Who knows? Miracles do exist after all. The agents eventually make it to the location and analyze the situation properly. Upon arrival, they notice Seo-ryung has passed out, even though she still had her hands applying pressure to the wound in her unconscious state. Lee Woo-shin steadies his gaze on her, completely drowned in the strength and will of this woman. His subordinates inform him the assassin isn't a woman, but is actually a man. They're certain he made his way into the building pretending to be a prostitute. Apparently, though, he got his balls completely crushed, supposedly by Seo-ryung. Once again, Woo-shin sets his gaze on Han Seo-ryung, and it settles in his heart how she's a completely different person from the kind and pure Seo-ryung he had as his wife. Now, she's just a strange young lady, unlike anyone he, Kim Hyun, or anyone else has ever encountered. At a later date, Seo-ryung's eyes slowly opens up. Sitting close to her is Lee Woo-shin. Our girl sits up in bed. She notices the clothing wrapped around her wounded arm, and he shows concern for her well-being before going ahead to tease her. He'd taken his time to watch her when she was unconscious. He claims he's curious about all she said before the incident. The team leader wasn't in the business of petting her. He didn't even commend her for a job well done. He's more interested in answering whatever questions she has. He's sure she had loads of them already. First thing on her mind is Hoo-chana. She couldn't even bring herself to ask him because she somewhat just assumed she didn't make it. To her surprise, Woo-shin informs her Hoo-chana is in the ICU, living and breathing even though she's not conscious. The medical personnel had to do an emergency surgery because of how dire the situation was when she arrived. It was wild, but Hoo-chana actually made it through 2 critical moments. She's a survivor, no doubt about it. Our guy informs Seo-ryung she's been out for a whole week too. He points out her injured arm and makes it clear it might be a while before she gets back to her daily life pending when she heals. Lee Woo-shin asks after her husband, and the question enrages her seriously. He claims he's done his research, and now he's aware her so-called husband is not on the family register. He's not listed as an emergency contact either, so it's pretty strange. He's starting to wonder if she's being honest about having a husband entirely. Lee Woo-shin is a menace. Such a thorn in her side for real. For real, he's practically enjoying the torment and mental torture he's passing her through. Seo-ryung isn't at all interested in the mockery, so she asks him to let her be since he's successfully pissed her off. He ignores her request and asks about the injury in her gum. She informs him of her struggles, how she had to fight for her life when the situation was dire. He points out how dumb her decision was, making it clear how bad things could have gone if she made a little error with loading the gun. Our girl keeps her composure. She's relaxed because nothing bad happened to her. At her words, he bursts into laughter and proceeds to question her about her husband's view on the kind of person she is. He'd like to know if her supposed husband knows she's not just stubborn, but also completely out of her mind. He calls her a self-righteous pretender. She keeps her calm and affirms her husband has no idea what she's like because she doesn't bother showing him this side of her. She claims her husband is fine just looking at her pretty face. Seo-young informs him she did save Chana because she's righteous. She doesn't deny the fact she felt bad for Chana, but something else was her driving force that day. She really just wanted to prove that both Lee Woo-shin and Kim Hyun were wrong. She needed to settle it in her heart with literal proof that there's never a moment when abandoning someone is justified. Not to drag matters any longer, but she stands her ground, claiming it was a calculated move and not some kind of moral heroism stunt. Woo-shin's gaze stiffens, and he looks pretty annoyed because he could recall how she looked when she was unconscious and somehow still held on to Chana. Before he could respond to her statement, she appreciates him for his help. If he hadn't helped her out, she'd be dead meat by now. The team leader does something strange. He thanks her too, and she's completely shook because it's such a surprise. He claims she went on ahead to take decisions on her own without following his orders, and now he's got a valid reason to get rid of her. Seo-young screams out, demanding a reason for his statement. He pats her gently on the neck and reminds her how she went full-blown assassin mode and fired a gun as a civilian, ultimately taking a life. He's so close to her right now, leaning over her, and she gets uncomfortable. He makes it clear she's got no way out with this stunt she pulled. Not even the organization could cover it up. He suggests she dismisses it as a horrible nightmare and move on completely. Our guy keeps a really straight face and lays it all out plainly at her feet. He claims the fact he's offering her one last chance at a normal life is his final courtesy to her. Woo-shin isn't particularly kind with his choice of words when speaking with her here. He practically calls her useless, claims she's a means to an end, a useful chess piece in his master plan. All her bickering has gotten to him already, and without many more words, he states his desire to never see her again. A few days go by and Han Seo-young makes her to the hospital to see Chana. In the ward, the news plays out really loud, and our female lead fixes her gaze on her unconscious friend. Seo-young gives Chana an update on her employment status and speaks some more about the recent happenings and the fact she's come to a state of confusion regarding the steps to take if she's meant to catch Kim Hyun. It's like she's hit a brick wall already, and our girl questions her reality, throwing questions to the wind. Someone responds from behind her, and the voice piques her attention. A man's in the room with her. He claims he's genuinely surprised she's still so full of determination, even after the incident she experienced. Seo-young isn't particularly pleased to see him, and she demands he introduces himself. The strange bearded man claims he owes her a great debt and apologizes for the late introduction. The bearded man introduces himself as the CEO of Blast, Mr. Kang Taegon. What does he want with our female lead? We'll find out soon enough. Mr. Taegon takes a seat in the ward and starts up a conversation with our female lead. He claims he's been meaning to visit Seo-young before now. Our girl found it difficult to grasp how a CEO could have any interest in someone like her. He makes it clear how grateful he is that she saved Chana. The hacker is a very valuable talent the CEO worked super hard to acquire, so the thought of losing someone so important was terrifying, even for him. Mr. Taegon knows just how much of his company would suffer if Chana wasn't back on her feet in due time. A ton-load of contracts are tied to the hacker. At his words, Seo-young couldn't help but wonder why the team leader wanted her to walk away from someone so important. She recalls his words, how he called her useless so she couldn't help but question her reality. Did he really choose to save our girl over Chana? CEO Taegon came here today to show his gratitude. He informs her the company owes her a great deal, but he'd like to know if there's anything she wants. A week goes by smoothly, and now the present location is the police training camp in Nigeria. Lee Woo-shin sits out by the pool, staring into the sky, observing the clouds. He sits in awkward silence for a few seconds before someone breaks up his relaxation time with a loud scream. One of Woo-shin's subordinates comes with a document in hand, and he seems so tense and agitated. Our guy shrugs it off, but his subordinate is very persistent. He'd shown up prepared with the printed copy of the information he urgently needs to pass across. Before Woo-shin agrees to hear him out, he requests for some ice. His subordinate is Jin Ho-jae, and the young man is not pleased with whatever news he had in his possession. One of our male lead subordinates grabs hold of the document and reads it out aloud. Apparently, the document is more or less an invitation to the special ops team member to train new recruits as training instructors. Woo-shin's subordinates don't think it's a duty they're obligated to partake in, considering the fact they just returned from Africa not too long ago. While they bicker on and on about what they feel, the team leader stretches and remains seated, just listening. One of his subordinates claim Chana's death had a massive toll on their team. Jin Ho-jae is seriously rattled at the mention of the hacker's death. Kim Tae-min, the green-haired dude, calms Ho-jae's nerves as he informs the team leader Chana isn't actually dead. Lee Woo-shin awaits her awakening. He's looking forward to getting some actual work done. Tae-min reads the document some more and informs the team leader they've been tasked with selecting replacements for the special task force members who were taken out in the assassination. Ho-jae seems so excited to be getting new members on the team. Tae-min, on the other hand, wasn't exactly startled because he knows how it went last time new recruits joined the team. Jin Ho-jae blames Tae-min for the recruits quitting. He recalls how his colleague made the recruits drink to stupor on their first day on the job. The two guys battle out their opinions in a heated conversation with a lot of demonstrations too. The noise is beginning to trouble Woo-shin, so he just stands up and attempts to leave the two guys by the pool. One of the guys calls on the team leader with a loud voice and he stops in his tracks. They'd both like to know what kind of recruit Woo-shin would like. Our guy takes a minute to reason and finally informs them he's not picky. He has no taste as long as the new recruits don't get on his nerves. Who else thinks the one person on his mind who gets on his nerves so bad is Han Seo-young? Talking about our girl, she receives a letter, and its content happens to be an invitation to the new recruit training program. Crazy how life works, right? Can't wait to see where this leads. CEO Taegon is on the phone with someone discussing Han Seo-young. He claims to have stumbled upon a very interesting personality quite recently. A few days ago, he met with our female lead at the hospital, and after appreciating her for saving Huchona, he'd asked what he could do to repay her, and her response was completely out of this world. Apparently, she wants to kidnap the deputy director of the NIS. When he questions her reason for a desire so ludicrous, Seo-young claims she just wants to do something bad, and she doesn't think she needs a reason to do it. That's her one and only request in exchange for Chana's life. The two individuals have a face-off as the CEO processes her request in his head for a few seconds. Sir Taegon regrets to inform her the request is something too wild, even for him. He gives her a breakdown of his reason for his decision, informs her just how powerful the Special Operations Team is and the risks entailed if they get entangled with the NIS. Notwithstanding, he still claims she could be a massive help to the Special Operations Team. On the phone, CEO Taegon brags about how tough Seo-young is. One way or the other, his decision stands, and she looks like the perfect fit for a bodyguard position they've been looking to fill. In the next scene, our female lead sits on a bench by the walkway and stares at the document in her possession. The recruit program sounds like such a hassle. She couldn't help but it's looking like the only way forward if she really wants to achieve her goal. Not too far off, some high school kids walk by and their voices draw our girl's attention. The sight of the high school girls, particularly the one with crutches, brings back memories from her high school days. Back then, she'd been pretty popular, but things didn't go too well. Seo-young got expelled even though she was a promising gymnast. The girls walking by wonder why an expelled student was back in school. The story of her expulsion was one of competition. Han Seo-young had pulled off a banned gymnastics move, and in doing so, provoked a fellow gymnast, Ju Da-yoon. The provoked young lady attempted the move, lost her balance and fell. In the process, Da-yoon's leg was completely shattered. I don't see how that's Seo-young's fault. After all, Ju Da-yoon was the one who copied a move she couldn't execute. It's crazy how Seo-young didn't even like gymnastics in the first place. It had so many limitations, our girl thought it'd be more fun if she was kicked off the mat altogether. Getting kicked off the mat for a minor violation was one thing. Committing murder, on the other hand, was way too wild. Han Seo-young desires a crazy, unbridled life. One without limits where everything could go wrong, explode, completely fall apart. She rises to her feet looking like she's ready to take on all the battles life throws her way. The reality she's accepted is that relying on anyone else is a joke. She'd do it all by her own strength, leaving absolutely nothing to chance. As it stands, it's all back to square one for her. Blast's new recruit training program is the next challenge in front of our female lead, and she's here to face it head-on. At the recruit training orientation, Han Seo-young happens to sit with the hot-headed agent, and he's so startled to see her there, he wouldn't shut up about it. The other intending recruits whisper amongst themselves at the sight of the loud agent discussing with our female lead. Our girl claims she'd rather cook and do laundry, but fate has other plans for her. She turns to him and mentions something about death, and it gets a stunned reaction from him. He speaks so loud, probably in an attempt to sound intimidating, but our girl keeps her composure. Seo-young makes it clear she's not longer in a position to put up with his tantrums. She's really not down for any nonsense. The most he could do now is beat her up or have his way with her, but she doesn't appreciate the fact he's being so familiar. Her words strike a chord in his ego, and he's visibly pissed. Before he could voice out his anger, someone walks up to the podium and hits the microphone. He manages to call the attention of everyone seated there. Our male lead is the man on the podium, and at the sight of him, Seo-young's eyes widen in shock. Lee Woo-shin introduces himself and informs the intending recruits he's in charge of their training. The Special Operations Team are lined up behind him. He states how they're more than ready for the training program. He speaks for a while before stopping mid-sentence as his eyes catch someone or something. Right off the podium, he sights Han Seoryong sitting amongst the recruits, and her appearance completely steals words right out of his mouth. Behind the team leader, his subordinates wonder why Wushin went silent for a while. His gaze is set on Seoryong's position. He looks so pissed seeing her, but he manages to complete his speech. After the orientation, the bus is ready to move all the recruits to the private camp, but Lee Wushin drags Han Seoryong and claims she'll not be heading on with them. He reminds her he made it very clear he never wanted to see her again, so our guy doesn't understand why or how she made her way here. Our girl demands he let go of her and even threatens to call the CEO right that instant if he didn't do as she asks. At the mention of the CEO, Lee Wushin stops in his tracks and turns to her completely lost for words. He's probably wondering what nonsense she's spouting, but to his greatest surprise, she makes it very clear she knows CEO Taegon, and she has him on speed dial. Unlike Wushin, who cut her off without hesitation, the CEO rewarded her. She's so confident he can't kick her off. Not without talking to Mr. Taegon first. Wushin's subordinates watch the encounter unfold almost like they're enjoying a drama playing live. Our male lead informs her the CEO has little to nothing to say regarding how this training program progresses because it all lies in his hands. The responsibility of choosing his subordinates rests on his shoulders and no one else's. He assures her she's got no chance of succeeding in the training, but she's not fazed. Our girl is more than ready for the challenge ahead, and all he's saying doesn't make her any less interested in taking the training. Lee Wushin wants to know if she's doing all this, going through all this trouble because of her husband. Seoryong doesn't dispute the idea. It makes his blood boil just hearing her speak. Our girl requests to know his plan to stop her when he's got nothing to do with her runaway husband. She looks him in the eye and assures the team leader she's not ashamed, not in the slightest. All she desires is that he pushes her through the training like everyone else who's here. He asks if her mission is to exact revenge on him, or if it is really just becoming an unhealthy obsession. Seoryong doesn't quite understand what he's going on about, but she blurts out her emotions. Regret, resentment, love, or murderous intent. He could pretty much attach every emotion in existence to this situation. When it concerns her husband, Kim Hyun, things are not quite easily explained. He stares in her direction for a while, probably analyzing the situation and preparing a response for her. And finally, he speaks. Lee Wushin leans closer, calls her attention, and proceeds to ask if she'd like him to just tell her the whole truth. I want him to tell her the truth so bad, but I doubt he'd be upfront about it just like that. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Lee finally decides to reveal his thoughts. He explains that when she begins walking the same path others have taken, she might come to understand that what people often call love is just another form of psychological manipulation. Making someone feel seen, understood, and less alone can easily trick the mind into believing it's love, especially when emotions are heightened. He warns her not to be deceived by her own thoughts, reminding her that she might simply be falling for a carefully crafted illusion. In his view, the man she thinks about isn't even considering her. Real revenge, he says, is living well, eating good food, being genuinely happy, and moving on. But she doesn't agree. To her, true revenge means ensuring that the man who hurt her can't live in peace or enjoy life. She's determined to hear the truth from her husband directly, not from Lee. She recalls a past moment and realizes that Lee must have already wanted her out of the picture back then. Regret tinges her thoughts as she reflects on the things she said to him. Meanwhile, in the male dormitory, Seong-wook stirs up tension among the men. The guys begin complaining about sharing a room with her. One of them eventually approaches and bluntly asks if she knows how to fight. Before the situation escalates, Seong-wook-chan steps in and reveals that she used to be a maid in their company, specifically the youngest and most attractive among the housekeepers. She silently notes that the place is truly a mess, but oddly enough, it's starting to feel entertaining. The men start making inappropriate comments, but before things get worse, Lee calls and demands to know what's causing the disturbance. One of the guys claims he can't live in the same room with a woman because something might happen. Lee scoffs at the idea and sarcastically questions if the guy is worried about being unable to control himself. He appears irritated and wonders aloud whether this batch was selected based on lack of intelligence. Referring to them as a bunch of immature boys, he points out how absurd it would be if they refused to work with future clients simply because they're women. Or worse, protested having a female teammate on their squad. He drives the point home that failing to view a fellow agent as a colleague is an issue of intellect, not desire. Lee then turns to her and directly asks what she wants to do. He suggests that perhaps offering her a separate room could fix the issue, but immediately notes that none are available unless she wants to share with an instructor. She quickly declines and insists that special treatment isn't necessary. She even tells him not to take it easy on her. Lee warns her of the difficulties ahead, but she shows no hesitation. He pushes further, asking if she plans to freely change clothes around the others. She responds calmly, ready to endure whatever challenges come her way. At that, He tosses a weapon to her and gives a strict instruction. If any of her teammates harass her, she must report it at once. He promises not to ask questions and says he'll remove the offender immediately. This annoys Seong-wook, but the matter ends there. With tension still in the air, the instructor steps forward and reminds everyone to return to their training. He warns that anyone who wants to quit should simply go to the drill yard and ring the bell. No drama, no delay. As all this unfolds, she glances around and quietly wonders what she could do to stop the admirable trainees who came all this way just to give their best. At 3:40 a.m., the entire camp is fast asleep, but she jolts awake at the sound of something hitting the floor. Her voice pierces the stillness as she questions what the object is. Lee appears, unfazed, and sarcastically wonders if she genuinely believed she'd get to sleep peacefully. Without hesitation, he lifts her off the ground and carries her to the others. She immediately notices that both her hands and feet are bound and complains about the discomfort. Lee, however, calmly welcomes her to the basic training of the blast unit. Without waiting for further protest, he turns to two of the men and abruptly pushes them into the river, both still tied up. As she watches in shock, he turns to her again and makes it clear that there's no easy way out for Agent Han Seo-ryong. He reminds her that there's no bell here to ring if she feels like quitting. Moving closer, he stares directly at her and pointedly asks if she feels like slapping him. She retorts by asking if she can spit instead, and boldly declares that he should hurry up and throw her in, because she won't ever back down. He seems both surprised and intrigued by her toughness. Lee then questions whether she was always this ruthless, or if marriage changed her. She replies that she was like this even before getting married. He pities her husband, but she quickly counters that her husband had far more secrets. In comparison, what she said earlier was merely a harmless white lie. When he asks whether the marriage was a scam, she admits that it was, and firmly states that she was the one who got scammed. In response, Lee finally lets her go, and she plunges into the frigid water. A sharp scream escapes her lips as the cold bites into her skin. Lee, standing at the edge, watches without emotion. She cries out, asking whether he's really going to leave them in the water, and begs for help. But instead of offering any rescue, Lee calmly explains that casualties and accidents are part of training like this. That's just how it goes. He mentions that the sun will rise in 10 minutes and casually wonders if they should stay and enjoy the view since they're already there. She begins to question his sanity. Lee asks once more if she still wants to slap him. She answers that she wants to do much worse. He continues teasing, unaffected, while the others silently agree. This man is a complete lunatic. Now aboard the boat, the group agrees to stick together for the time being. They insist that she join them, and she complies. Lee throws out a cheeky remark, suggesting that if they keep going like this, they'll end up stripping each other. She turns her gaze toward him in silence. They soon arrive at their destination. The challenge awaiting them is simple but cruel. If they can't untie the rope binding them, they won't be allowed into the dormitory. Lee urges them to hurry before they end up like frozen fish. As the others begin helping one another loosen their ropes, she takes a different approach. Refusing any assistance, she works to free herself, and manages to do it. The rest look on in surprise and admiration. Later, as they gather in the bathing area, the topic of conversation shifts to how she pulled it off alone. Some of the trainees start to think it would actually be unfortunate if she chose to leave. Her presence is beginning to affect them. Outside, she waits alone. Lee eventually shows up and tells her to follow him. Without much explanation, he gives her permission to use the shower in his dorm. She hesitates but keeps her eyes on him. Not waiting for a response, he pulls her in, saying that she's not really in a position to be choosy right now. She questions his intentions, but he tells her to relax, pointing out that her body temperature is dangerously low. She retorts that she's not the only one freezing and that whatever discomfort she's facing shouldn't concern an instructor. Lee suddenly changes the subject and brings up her husband. Caught off guard, she asks why he's bringing that up. He explains that he's the kind of person who always needs to know everything about those under his command, even down to their financial details. Inwardly, she reflects on how much she kept from her husband, particularly her true personality. He was gentle and kind, and she always feared that showing her real self would drive him away. She had eliminated people before, yet never once experienced a nightmare. That part of her life she kept hidden, worried that if he ever found out what kind of person she truly was, he would have abandoned her long ago. That's why she tried so hard to be the perfect wife, because she desperately wanted to remain by his side. Then, out of nowhere, Lee questions whether her husband wasn't actually more similar to her than she ever realized. She refuses to acknowledge Lee's suggestion, unwilling to admit that her husband might have been like her. If she does, even the moments she thought were real love would dissolve into lies. Clinging to her belief, she asks Lee to make a promise, not to bring this subject up again. And if the day comes when she catches her husband, Lee must lie for her too, saying she is a virtuous, timid, and gentle woman. When he questions the reason, she replies that he started this conversation, so now he must take responsibility for it. He finds her logic bizarre and wonders aloud if she no longer plans to take revenge once she finds her husband. But she tells him she still will, by going intimate with her husband. Whether or not it was love for him doesn't matter to her anymore. All she wants now is to get him back. She warns Lee that if things go wrong, he won't be safe either. She's capable of doing terrible things too. Later, the blast training continues, marking the end of the first week. The rule is clear. Anyone who can't keep up with the whistle won't be eating lunch. Lee turns to Han Seo-young and suddenly asks if she enjoys singing. Caught off guard, she struggles to answer but tells him to blow the whistle. Instead, he smirks and says he'll only do that if she sings. As the tension rises, he adds that her entire team will go hungry at this rate if she doesn't comply. Under her breath, she grumbles that generation after generation, only awful instructors seem to get assigned to this beautiful land of mountains and rivers. Her mind drifts. How long has it even been since she last had lunch? Noticing something off, Lee approaches her, curious if she's on medication. He openly admits that steroid injections aren't uncommon in this field, and there are entire programs dedicated to managing drug-enhanced training. If that were the case with her, he says he'd be somewhat relieved. Confused, she asks for clarification. He explains that she seems to have changed since their first meeting, and it's not just physical. It's as if deeper, unknown issues have surfaced. She wonders why pushing through training should be seen as a problem, and he tells her plainly. If she doesn't drop out, it eventually becomes his responsibility. He asks if she's hiding some kind of edge. She admits she is. She explains that she doesn't fear much. Never has. Since childhood, she's never hesitated to endure pain or even to cause it. Outside of her husband, fear was a foreign concept. Compared to her past, this training feels like nothing. She even endured intense gymnastics as a child, so this doesn't shake her. Curious, Lee takes her hands, wanting to confirm something. As he holds them, she finds it strange that she keeps letting her guard down around this man. It unsettles her. Almost immediately, she pulls away, catching a familiar scent in the air. To her, the presence closing in feels eerily similar to Kim Hyun. At that moment, Jin Ho-jae quietly signals her to stay silent. Han Seo-young finds herself drifting into memory, recalling a conversation between a woman and her husband regarding the woman's own spouse. Kim Hyun had casually remarked that the man had a sharp jawline and gave off a warm, hearty presence. Curious, she had asked to know more about this husband, and the woman explained, painting a picture that remained tucked away in Seo-young's mind. Days later, during training, she becomes distracted again. As she watches one of the trainees, a familiar scent wafts through the air, one that stirs something deep inside her. It's the scent of her husband, a smell no cologne or detergent could ever replicate. The man she's watching notices her gaze and questions her. Still absorbed in her thoughts, she silently reassures herself that an NIS agent wouldn't be present here of all places. She brushes off the moment by offering to help the guy with his laundry, saying she's good at it. Before she can act on it, Instructor Lee intervenes. With a sharp voice, he tells her to keep her eyes forward and stay focused. He signals for the trainee to move along, then turns back to Seo-young with a warning. This is the second time he's caught her distracted by a guy, and he makes it clear that if it happens a third time, there will be consequences. He explains that while he might turn a blind eye to a trainee practicing knife work too neatly, he'll never ignore signs of flirting. As she walks away, annoyed, she flips her middle finger behind her, but Lee catches it and flicks her nose in return. He teases her, asking why she would drool over her instructor. She denies doing so, and he warns her not to search for a replacement husband in a place like this. Meanwhile, back at his base, Lee follows a different lead. He questions a subordinate about Director Kang Tae-gon. The man reports that he had run a light investigation but found no concrete connection to the Owl organization. However, something about a past business trip to Thailand seems to have left a mark. Since then, the director has shown an odd interest in the Owl's profile, frequently opening her records and possibly even ordering someone to investigate her. The informant adds that Blast Corporation has been increasing its recruitment of female bodyguards, pulling in strong candidates from various regions and giving them specialized training. Whenever Director Kang traveled to Russia, he always took these female guards with him. Yet afterward, all updates about them vanished. Though they always left together, he consistently returned alone. Lee takes in the information. When he asks for more, the man confesses that there's still no clue what Kang Tae-gon does during those Russia trips. Before ending the call, the man shifts the conversation back to Han Seo-young. He wonders aloud whether she truly didn't recognize Lee, despite bumping into him up close. He questions if Lee is so sure just because his current face doesn't match Kim Hyun's. Lee admits the truth. The face, voice, and even his scent are all fabricated. The final question lingers. What if Han Seo-young is the type of woman who falls deeply for men like Kim Hyun? Lee can only let out a sigh. The next day begins with Han Seo-young trying to comfort Ji-woo, who feels humiliated after a mishap during training. She gently explains that what happened was just a result of a sudden shift in pressure and nothing to be embarrassed about. Ji-woo hesitantly asks if what she saw was actually a snake and not something more shameful. His mind is plagued by the thought that he always comes last in every activity, and he wonders if he's just not cut out for this. She looks at him with calm reasoning. If he quits over something like this, she jokes that there will be no one left behind her in performance. Then, with a strangely earnest tone, she declares that all feces are precious, that a healthy digestive system is a sign of life, not shame. She questions why a soldier who did something so human and desperate would run away afterward. Ji-woo, taking her words to heart, suddenly announces that he has no intention of running away anymore. Elsewhere, Agent Jin Ho-jae notices Instructor Lee silently watching the interaction between Seo-young and Ji-woo. With mild curiosity, he asks if Lee also finds Han Seo-young attractive. Lee reacts with visible surprise. Jin Ho-jae continues, sharing that lately she's been looking at him with intense eyes, as though she wants something from him. It's a kind of gaze he's never received from a woman before, and he boldly concludes that maybe it means he's about to get a girlfriend. Lee quickly shuts that thought down. He reminds Jin Ho-jae that Seo-young already has a husband who's absolutely in love with her. In fact, Lee suggests that if Jin Ho-jae doesn't believe it, he should try insulting her husband, though he warns not to do that if she's holding a weapon. From what Lee has seen, her possessiveness is no joke. But Jin Ho-jae still insists that her gaze felt intense, almost seductive. Lee brushes it off and tells him he's not the only one who finds her attractive, but that's no reason to get carried away. He then tells Jin Ho-jae to leave. Later in the day, training resumes, Instructor Lee announces that the squad will be creating improvised flotation devices, which requires everyone to remove their pants. The male trainees begin undressing without hesitation. As Lee surveys the group, he pauses near Seo-young and begins to comment that under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even want to look at someone who lacks the strength to save themselves. But given her situation. Before he can finish, she interrupts and calmly removes her pants too, refusing to be treated differently. The training begins without further hesitation. Afterward, Lee dismisses the group, instructing them to run straight to the barracks and not to look back. However, he tells Seo-young to stay behind. She thanks him but adds that she doesn't really appreciate this kind of special consideration. He hands her something to wrap around her waist so the others won't see too much, but she tells him that she already considered all of that before deciding to remove her pants. It doesn't bother her. Lee, slightly exasperated, questions whether she really lacks any sense of adaptability. She retorts that she'd rather be inflexible than become an unbearable jerk like someone she knows. Lee lets out a sigh of regret and mutters that at this rate, even her butt crack will be on full display. He sarcastically adds that the drill instructor might find that entertaining. She questions what any of this has to do with the instructor, and Lee calmly replies that he is responsible for managing and maintaining balance within the unit. As he wraps his shirt around her waist, he confesses that he's been both harder and gentler on her than the others, all in the name of keeping the group stable. She tries to stop him mid-action, but he leans in, silencing her with a quiet command. His proximity draws her gaze, and he notices. When he asks what she's looking at, she responds bluntly, pointing out that his nipples are hard and that she can see below his waistline. Lee expresses disappointment, but then turns the comment back on her, noting that she's already wet. Embarrassed, she bolts away. The scene shifts to week 5 of Blast training. Instructor Lee announces that he wants a quick sparring match before the day's session begins. He calls for Song-wook-chan and Han Seo-young to step forward and collect their gear. After receiving their equipment, Lee personally helps Seo-young adjust hers. Once the match starts, Song-wook-chan quickly gains the upper hand, knocking her down. But she recovers swiftly. As he approaches, she lands a solid kick between his legs and stands tall again. Watching from the sidelines, Agent Jin Ho-jae curiously asks what kind of technique that was. Lee responds dismissively, calling it nothing more than a senseless brawl. Despite the casual reply, Lee's mind is unsettled. He starts to reflect on the tangled history between himself and the woman before him. He had been the one pretending, the one acting, yet he keeps feeling like he's the one who ended up deceived. Doubt creeps in. Was the woman he once lived with truly who he believed she was? And was the owl, his target, nothing more than an illusion? He remembers that after the Bird Box operation ended, his orders were to maintain a marriage with her. From the very first moment he approached her, up until the day he disappeared, everything had gone according to the mission. In his eyes, the objective had been completed. There's no longer a reason to keep watching over the changed version of Owl, and he sees no benefit in stirring up more complications. Yet, the current match pulls him back to the present. Seeing that Song-wook-chan is going too hard on Seo-young, Lee intervenes. He tells the trainee to stop, but when his command is ignored, he doesn't hesitate. He steps in himself to put an end to it. Instructor Lee stands before the trainees and announces that their next lesson will focus on Krav Maga, a military combat technique rooted in instinctive human reflexes. As he speaks, Song-wook-chan watches him with clear resentment, his bruised face betraying his lingering frustration. Lee comments on the widely held belief that he can disarm an armed opponent with nothing but his bare hands. He challenges Song-wook-chan to aim a weapon at him, and just as the trainee points it, Lee moves in a blur. In mere seconds, he disarms him with precision. Turning back to the rest of the squad, Lee uses the moment as a demonstration. He explains that after neutralizing an opponent's first move, the next step is to immediately follow up with a strike to any vulnerable spot. Something that delivers enough shock to disable or throw the opponent off balance. He emphasizes that Krav Maga relies more on technique than brute strength. As long as the fighter is agile and flexible, even someone lacking power can handle a larger adversary. The key is to never be intimidated, no matter the opponent's size. Days pass. One evening, as they eat together, the conversation shifts to upcoming changes. Some begin speaking about farewells in advance. A trainee mentions hearing rumors that more than half of them are planning to quit. Another adds a humorous concern. Whatever happens, he hopes he doesn't end up sharing a room with instructor Lee Woo-shin. Seo-young, curious, asks, "What's so bad about that?" The others are quick to explain. Lee, they say, comes from one of the most feared and notorious private military companies. They speak of strange equipment he's brought with him. Tools like nerve disruption injections and other questionable gear that make even experienced trainees uneasy. One guy admits openly that he doesn't think he can handle the upcoming training module, said to be the most grueling part of the entire 10-week program. Soon after, Instructor Lee addresses them all formally. The new module is focused on refusal to divulge information training. While the official title sounds polished, he doesn't sugarcoat what it truly is. Torture training. He announces that every method possible will be used to pressure them into revealing information. For Han Seo-young, her mission is clear. She must not reveal the coordinates she has memorized. She has to endure for the next 48 hours without giving them up. The goal is to train them not just to endure pain, but to maintain composure and discipline under extreme interrogation. The moment training begins, everything shifts. The trainees are immediately overwhelmed. Their bodies go limp as the methods take effect. During the torment, Seo-young drifts into unconsciousness. In that state, she dreams of her husband. He stands before her, saying he's leaving. Desperately, she pleads with him to stay. She reaches out, asking him not to abandon her, but he only smiles gently and tells her to compose herself. The moment feels real, but her heart tightens with pain. Suddenly, she awakens with a scream. Her consciousness returns and her senses slowly adjust. Instructor Lee watches over her and casually comments on her late awakening. He admits he'd begun to wonder if she would ever wake up. As Han Seo-young regains more awareness, she begins to suspect that something had been added to their food. She asks directly, but Instructor Lee gives no real answer, only a cryptic remark that it's a trade secret. Still groggy, she begins to mutter about the codes in the note she was given, admitting that she already understands their meaning. But Lee doesn't acknowledge that. Instead, he moves closer, saying he wants to hear something different today. His tone darkens as he poses a grim question. Has she ever considered what might happen if she were captured in a place like South Africa? He describes, without hesitation, how naked female prisoners are thrown into male prison cells where they suffer brutal treatment. Such interrogation methods, he explains, are never publicly revealed but are very much real on the other side of the world. He doesn't stop there. He questions what would happen if she starts doing dirty work at Blast, especially under him. In his view, she would be torn apart in the process. He ridicules her, calling her a brat who couldn't even take off her pants willingly during water training. According to him, she sees only what she wants to and remains completely blind to everything else. That's why, he says, he has chosen to train her personally, to open her eyes to what she has been refusing to see. As his words grow more aggressive, his actions follow suit. He begins touching her against her will. She tells him to stop, but he doesn't. Instead, he taunts her, questioning whether she intends to keep using her so-called fighting spirit to justify everything. He tells her to save that talk for someone who cares, insisting that she's nothing but an obstacle. He urges her to give up and live a normal life. If she agrees to stop searching for her husband, he says, that one admission alone would be enough to end her training immediately. But she meets his eyes, unwavering. Then, without hesitation, she spits at him. Her voice sharp and certain, she declares that unless he intends to drag her husband out personally, he has no business interfering in her path. Unfazed, he presses on. His touch grows more intrusive, making her deeply uncomfortable. She snaps, telling him that if he wants sex so badly, he should go to another room. Instead of backing off, he shifts the topic again. He questions whether she'd prefer someone else's presence. Perhaps someone like Jin Ho-jae. She bluntly affirms that she would, without hesitation. He presses further, asking if her preference for Jin Ho-jae is because he resembles her husband. Confused, she questions who he's even referring to. Lee mocks the idea, claiming that if she finds a big, bold-faced man like Jin Ho-jae attractive, then something must be wrong with her eyes. She answers with calm certainty. Yes, that is exactly what her husband looked like. Lee scoffs. He says there are instructors she's allowed to look at and those she is not, like Jin Ho-jae. He then adds that he is finished with common sense. And with that, his actions grow more intense, continuing to violate her space seriously. Lee speaks again, this time attacking the unwavering loyalty Seo-ryong shows to her husband. To him, it doesn't appear as faithfulness, but rather something obsessive, like a sickness. He questions why it's so difficult for her to simply walk away and try to live a normal life. But Seo-ryong doesn't flinch. She explains that her husband wasn't separate from her normal life. He was the very heart of it. Without him, living normally is impossible. He gave her something she was never born with, something she had never experienced until he came along. Even if blind devotion is truly a disease, she accepts it. She's willing to live like a patient for the rest of her life. Lee is stunned that she would willingly endure anything, no matter how twisted, just to cling to that bond. She tells him that she won't break or run because of someone like him. He doesn't even resemble her husband in the slightest. To her, he has nothing worth comparing. If anyone in this place has redeeming traits, it's instructor Jin Ho-jae. As far as Lee is concerned, she's unmoved by whatever torment he brings. She even mocks his earlier move, daring him to go fetch the taser he threw aside and shove it in her ear. Let them see who wins then. Lee sneers, calling it revolting to be compared to her husband. But the tables turn unexpectedly. She suddenly suggests that they go intimate instead of this act he's putting on. Her voice is steady, calculated. His surprise is visible. As her hands are still bound, she wraps her legs around him, taking control of the moment. She begins to describe her husband's physical features with clarity and detail, throwing Lee off. She adds that she's seen Lee's own body before too and describes it coldly, without affection. Seo-ryong continues, explaining that she once believed she could only be with her husband, but now, thanks to this, she realizes that isn't true. Her words are deliberately provocative, seductive even, and for a few seconds Lee freezes, caught off guard. Eventually, he sets down a bucket for her to step on, and then, without a word, exits the room, claiming he'll pretend he didn't hear any of that. Days pass. During a mealtime conversation, a few trainees exchange stories about recent events. One of them brings up a shocking incident. Instructor Lee Woo-shin had apparently stormed into a torture session and violently attacked the instructor who had been interrogating him. According to the trainee, Lee kept yelling that he'd only stop if the trainee gave up the intel, insisting that if the information was leaked, it would be his own failure for not preparing the trainee well enough. Lee, they say, was all smiles while delivering brutal blows, even smashing a chair over the instructor. As the trainee recalls, the display was so intense it brought him to tears. But then it dawned on them. It was all a setup. Another trainee points out that the whole scene was staged, a psychological tactic meant to mess with his mind. The beaten instructor had been Jin Ho-jae all along. Meanwhile, the trainee sitting beside Seo-ryong leans closer and says he heard her ordeal was no less brutal. Something about undergoing water torture for a full 48 hours without any rest. She responds calmly, admitting she was angry at first, but ultimately it didn't feel terrible. In fact, she found something refreshing in the experience. It led her into a part of herself she hadn't known existed before. Curious, the trainee asks if she awakened something through the torture. She replies that she does awaken from time to time, but it has nothing to do with the torture. To her, it felt more like breaking a taboo, one that had silently ruled over her life until now. While practicing target shooting, Instructor Lee's mind wanders. His thoughts circle back to something Han Seo-ryong once said, the most recognizable feature of her husband. It unsettles him more than he wants to admit. A wave of frustration creeps in as he silently acknowledges that he cannot even retrieve the man's body. Nearby, Agent Ki Taemin speaks up. He comments on Instructor Jin Ho-jae's recent encounter, remarking that from the way things played out, it would be easy to assume the instructor was the one tortured instead of the trainee. Lee listens for a moment before cutting in, questioning if Taemin is angry because his friend was involved. He then asks to confirm a long-standing suspicion, that Taemin and Jin Ho-jae have known each other since childhood. Taemin confirms this quietly. Lee, however, doesn't stop there. With a sarcastic tone, he remarks that if they were that close, they must have bathed together often as kids. Then, without warning, he asks if Taemin ever noticed anything unusual about Jin Ho-jae's lower region during those childhood years. The question leaves Taemin stunned and speechless. Lee walks off, muttering to himself about how a simple sound, like the cry of an owl zao, can shake his sanity without warning. His memories pull him deeper. Everything about his last operation with Seo-ryong continues to haunt him. Even moments that should have felt peaceful, like dozing off beside her on a warm, sunny day, bring no comfort. Their simple routines echo in his mind. The shared breakfast that felt light and natural. The neighborhood strolls filled with quiet laughter. Yet beneath those soft memories lies a growing discomfort. A thirst, an emotion that keeps rising unchecked. He doesn't understand why Seo-ryong clings so tightly to the warmth of her husband. Why she can't let go. Why that obsession runs so deep. One thing is clear. She's no longer someone he can control. Whatever influence he once had over her has slipped away. It becomes obvious to him that the time has come to make a decision. To pick a side, before the tension between them turns into something irreversible. Days later, the trainees gather in a classroom. As they settle in, Han Seo-ryong sits silently, lost in thought. The lingering pain from the torture still clings to her mind, and unexpectedly, she finds herself missing her mother. There's a sudden longing for home, for a different kind of life. But the memory passes just as Instructor Lee walks in and begins to teach. Once the session ends, he delivers a sobering message. He informs them that upon successful completion of their training, some will be assigned to high-risk countries, regions overrun by crime, corruption, and conflict. In these places, mercenaries like himself thrive, and danger becomes a daily companion. He warns them that the company will not be held accountable if they end up in a place worse than hell. And he makes it clear, in their line of work, morality has no place. Their first commandment is simple: abandon thy neighbor. They must let go of the idea of salvation because it doesn't exist in the world they're entering. Seo-ryong listens and responds without hesitation. If hell is the only place where she can see her husband again, then that's where she'll go. Lee reacts with a bitter edge, remarking that she has a unique ability to make such morbid words sound almost poetic. He reminds her that she doesn't even know what the man looks like anymore, and questions how she expects to recognize him in a crowd. Then, mockingly, he adds that if a divine being were to appear before her, she wouldn't even realize who it was. After the others leave the classroom, Instructor Lee quietly returns. Alone in the stillness, he picks up a book and begins flipping through the pages. His eyes settle on a familiar drawing, and frustration rises once again. He finds himself asking why Han Seo-ryong continues to stir people up and push them to the edge. Her presence, her persistence, it gets under his skin. Meanwhile, the harshest part of the training begins. For mercenaries sent to hostile foreign lands, the conditions simulated during this week are as brutal as any battlefield. The enemy territory becomes a version of hell, where even the most basic human needs, like sleep, privacy, or clean water, are stripped away. There's no rest for 7 days straight, no change of clothes, no proper meals. They are forced to eat with their bare hands and relieve themselves out in the open. This grueling week is a pure and deliberate descent into survival mode. It's called Hell Week for a reason. Despite the suffering, Seo-ryong grits her teeth and presses on. She reminds herself that this nightmare is necessary. She must endure it if she hopes to track him down. Everything she suffers here is part of the cost. During one of the exercises, Lee walks among the exhausted trainees holding a bottle filled with murky liquid. He remarks that the contents are more like dirty water than anything drinkable. Then, with mocking generosity, he splashes it on the trainees, pretending he's treating them to fine liquor. Eventually, he makes his way to Seo-ryong. Standing before her, he explains, half seriously, half mockingly, that on real missions, unexpected variables are bound to appear. A leader must decide quickly whether to eliminate those variables or take control of them. He admits that for a while now, he's been leaning toward elimination. But now, perhaps, he's reconsidering. Maybe there's value in trying to manage the chaos instead of destroying it. He tells her to push through the rest of the week, promising to help her uncover something she hasn't yet realized within herself. Hours pass, and the physical toll continues to build. With a heavy log balanced across her shoulders, Seo-ryong moves in sync with the others. She turns to Dong Ji-woo, barely able to keep upright. Her voice is faint as she confesses that she feels like she's about to pass out. Ji-woo reacts with alarm, urging her to endure just 2 more hours, but she calmly instructs him. If she collapses, he must act like he doesn't know her. He shouldn't react or draw attention. As long as the instructors remain unaware, she'll recover and rise on her own. She warns him especially not to meet eyes with instructor Lee Wushin. Unable to speak, she begins writing something on the dusty ground. Jiwoo watches, unsure, as Lee approaches from a distance. Lee draws closer, his eyes landing on her faint movements. Curious, he leans over and examines what she's scribbled into the dirt. The name Kim Hyeon stares back at him. Irritation flickers in his expression. He mutters to himself about her stubbornness, still unable to understand where someone like her even came from. Once again, she has managed to drive him out of his usual composure. Shaking his head, he walks away. Unbeknownst to him, Seo-ryung has already passed out. Han Seo-ryung lies half-conscious on a bed, barely able to differentiate between dream and reality. In her haze, she thinks she sees Kim Hyun and wonders aloud why he has come home so early. She tries to explain that she had a strange dream, one that left her chest aching as if there were a hole torn through it. As her mind drifts between wakefulness and sleep, she feels warmth on her skin. Kim Hyeon, at least in her dream, soothes her aching body with a warm compress, massaging her gently. She admits how much she misses him, even in this fragile state. When morning comes, she stirs again, finally regaining clarity. Sitting beside her is Dong Ji-woo. He notices her teary eyes and gently asks if she has been crying. She can't believe the ordeal is over, and that she made it through all of Hell Week. Ji-woo explains that she passed out toward the end, but fortunately, no one noticed. Since the instructors didn't catch on, she wasn't disqualified or removed. He adds that, once the training ended, instructor Lee Wushin carried her on his back all the way there. So even if the others didn't notice, the instructor certainly did. Just then, Lee enters the room and questions why she had been crying earlier. As he steps closer, he bluntly asks if Dong Ji-woo made her cry. Ji-woo picks up on the shift in tone and quickly excuses himself. Alone with her, Lee insists on knowing the truth. She denies crying, but he doesn't believe her. He sarcastically asks if Ji-woo did something absurd, like licking her eyeballs, leaving her scrambling to change the subject. She requests to wash up, but Lee cuts in, asking where she plans to do that. When she replies, he informs her coldly that, starting immediately, she is banned from using the dormitory showers. Her surprise is clear. He explains that the showers may be shared among trainees on a rotating schedule, but from now on, she should not take part. Then he pulls out her notebook and confesses that he had made the mistake of thinking she was the most fragile among them. As it turns out, she's far from vulnerable, something he had grossly misjudged as an instructor. Stunned, she asks why he read her private notebook without permission, but he brushes past the question. Instead, he focuses on something that caught his attention in its pages. He asks if sleeping with other men was truly one of her listed goals. She feigns ignorance, trying to deflect, but he steps closer. She asks what he's doing, and he replies that he thought she was filled with venom. But her current expression, pouting, feigning innocence, tells a different story. He pushes further, asking what would happen if they became intimate and he somehow felt like her husband. Would that be enough to make him a candidate too? He questions whether she thinks she can determine true love through physical connection, whether the emotional difference would become obvious through touch alone. He reminds her that pleasure can be faked with shocking precision, and that there are over 70 documented ways to be intimate with someone. He insists that what she's hoping for, that love alone will allow her to recognize her husband instantly, is nothing more than a delusion. The more he looks at her, the more frustrated he becomes, feeling like he is slowly losing control of his own mind. She silently reflects on Lee's erratic behavior toward her. She doesn't fully understand why he reacts this way, but one thing feels certain. His current outburst has nothing to do with her personally. She suspects he, too, has lost someone important, but unlike her, he gave up searching. So now, every time he sees her unrelenting efforts, he probably feels a mix of resentment and contempt. Still, even after everything, she clings to a single belief: that love, somehow, can still fix all that has been broken. It's that conviction that keeps pushing her toward foolish decisions, like the list in her notebook where she wrote out her candidates for intimacy. She had listed instructors first, and at the very top was Jin Ho-jae.
After a long pause, Lee breaks the tension. He says he will help her find her husband and promises to bring her the man who looks exactly like him, alive and whole. But he lays down one condition. From now on, no matter what he says, she must not disobey him again.
Enjoying this recap so far? Please comment below. Also, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.